250 pounds of sheer biological panic is currently wrapping its arms around your throat. The man you just jumped out of a perfectly good helicopter to save is actively, aggressively trying to murder you. His eyes are wide, unblinking white circles of absolute terror. He is not a human being anymore. He is an amygdala in overdrive, operating on a million-year-old primal instinct that tells his brain the only way to survive is to climb to the highest point possible. Right now, that highest point is your skull. You are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, in the dead of night, being battered by 20-foot swells generated by a Category 4 hurricane. The freezing black water is flooding over your face as he drives your head beneath the surface, standing on your shoulders to gasp for air. Your lungs are burning. The massive MH-60T Jayhawk helicopter hovering 40 feet above you is blasting your position with hurricane-force rotor wash, atomizing the surface of the ocean and making it completely impossible to breathe even when you break the surface. If you do not physically break this man's grip, establish absolute mechanical dominance over his thrashing body, and force him into a rescue basket in the next 30 seconds, you are both going to sink into the black void and die. Welcome back to the briefing. If you are newly assigned to this operational grid, let me give you the baseline. I am a retired officer from the United States Special Operations Community. I spent the better part of 2 decades executing direct action, unconventional warfare, hostage rescue, and foreign internal defense in denied, highly hostile territories that will never officially appear on your evening news broadcasts. Because of the active, classified non-disclosure agreements locked in windowless vaults at the Pentagon, my face remains completely redacted and my name is permanently off the grid. The military gave me a profound, highly lethal skill set, but it took its pound of flesh in return. My skeletal structure is a roadmap of titanium hardware. My joints are degraded to bone-on bone, and I carry the localized nerve damage of a long, violent career. The Department of Veterans Affairs sends a disability check every month to offset the physical destruction, but I am not here to rattle a tin cup. I am an officer. I was raised to lead, and I firmly believe in working for my keep. This channel operates on a strictly enforced operational trade. I give you the raw, unfiltered, classified reality of modern warfare and elite tactical training. I break down the grueling psychology, the lethal physics, and the institutionalized suffering that Hollywood directors, video game designers, and military recruiters deliberately hide from the public. In exchange, I simply ask for your engagement. You hit the subscribe button, you smash the like button, and you drop a comment down below. That engagement feeds the YouTube algorithm, it keeps this channel airborne, and it allows me to stay fiercely independent while delivering this intelligence directly to you. If you can respect that trade, then lock and load. We have a highly chaotic, violently turbulent movement ahead of us today. Today, we are completely shifting our operational environment. We are leaving the terrestrial battlefield behind. In the special operations community, whether you are Delta Force, a Navy SEAL, or an Army Ranger, the fundamental reality of warfare is that we attempt to control the environment. We use close air support to level buildings. We use explosive breaching to destroy physical barriers. We use overwhelming, precise kinetic violence to neutralize human threats. We bring order to the chaos by imposing our will upon the enemy. But there is a specific breed of military operator who operates in an environment that absolutely cannot be controlled, cannot be destroyed, and cannot be intimidated. You cannot call in an airstrike on a rogue wave. You cannot put a 5.56 millimeter bullet into a Category 4 hurricane. You cannot negotiate with the freezing, infinite mass of a storm-ravaged ocean. Today, we are analyzing the men who jump out of helicopters directly into the apex of nature's wrath. We are deconstructing the United States Coast Guard Aviation Survival Technician (ASD) program. We are going inside the rescue swimmer school. The Coast Guard is often criminally overlooked by the civilian public, who tend to fixate on the Department of Defense branches. But within the Tier 1 military community, the rescue swimmers command absolute unquestioned respect. They hold one of the highest attrition rates in the entire United States Armed Forces. Well over 50% of the candidates who arrive at the ASTA school in Petaluma, California will wash out, quit, or be medically disqualified. In some classes, the attrition rate spikes to 80%. They do not fail because they cannot swim. Every man who arrives at that facility is a phenomenal swimmer. They fail because the ocean does not care about your lap times in a heated, chlorinated, perfectly calm indoor pool. The ocean is an apex predator, and the ASD school is designed to simulate the absolute terror of being hunted by the water. Let us break down the physical and psychological architecture of the training. The foundation of the rescue swimmer is built on a concept called water confidence. To a civilian, water confidence means you are not afraid to jump into the deep end of a pool. To a military instructor, water confidence means your heart rate does not spike when you are held underwater for 2 minutes, your vision goes dark, your diaphragm is convulsing, and another man is actively trying to rip your air supply away from you. The pool sessions at Petaluma are designed to induce systematic, controlled panic. The human brain is hardwired with the mammalian diving reflex, but it is also hardwired to panic when carbon dioxide builds up in the bloodstream. When a candidate is forced to perform underwater crossovers, brick-treading exercises, and breath-holding drills while severely fatigued, the amygdala constantly screams at the prefrontal cortex to quit, surface, and gasp for air. But the true nightmare of the ASD curriculum, and the exact reason why the washout rate is so staggeringly high, is the releases and escapes phase. This is where the instructors simulate the agonizing reality of a panicked victim. When a ship sinks in a storm, the people in the water are not calmly treading water, waiting for a savior to hand them a life ring. They are suffering from severe hypothermia. They have inhaled toxic mixtures of salt water and diesel fuel. They are exhausted, terrified, and operating purely on survival instinct. When a rescue swimmer drops into the water and approaches them, the victim does not see a rescuer. The victim sees a flotation device. The victim will violently lunge at the swimmer. They will wrap their arms around the swimmer's neck in a desperate front head hold or rear head hold. Because they are drowning, they possess the terrifying, hysterical strength of a human being fighting for their last breath. They will drag the rescue swimmer straight to the bottom of the ocean. In the training pool, the Coast Guard instructors play the role of the panicked victim. These instructors are massively fit, highly experienced swimmers. Their explicit goal is to drown the candidate. The candidate swims toward the instructor. The instructor violently attacks. He grabs the candidate around the neck, locks his legs around the candidate's torso, and forcefully drives them both to the bottom of a 16-foot deep pool. The candidate is instantly deprived of oxygen. The weight of a fully grown man is crushing their airways. If the candidate panics, if they thrash wildly, they burn their remaining oxygen in seconds, they inhale pool water, and they fail the evolution. The candidate must execute a highly specific, mechanically perfect martial arts escape underwater. If the instructor has them in a front head hold, the candidate must tuck their chin to protect their airway, bring their hands up through the center of the instructor's arms, forcefully thrust their hips upward to break the leverage, push the instructor away, and spin them around to gain back control. But the instructor does not just let go. The instructor fights back. It is a brutal, exhausting underwater wrestling match. The candidate has to physically overpower a man who is trying to drown them while holding their own breath and then seamlessly transition into a cross-chest carry, locking their arm across the instructor's chest and towing them backward through the water. The instructors will do this over and over and over again. They will do it until the candidate's muscles are completely flooded with lactic acid. They will do it until the candidate's lungs feel like they are filled with broken glass. They are testing the candidate's psychological breaking point. They need to know that when a 250-pound terrified fisherman grabs the swimmer by the throat in the middle of a freezing hurricane, the swimmer will not panic, will not freeze, and will forcefully establish mechanical dominance over the victim. In the rescue swimmer community, there is a dark, unspoken reality. Sometimes, to save a life, you have to apply extreme physical violence to the person you are rescuing. You cannot reason with a drowning man. You cannot negotiate with the amygdala. If a victim is dragging you under and the mechanical releases are failing, a rescue swimmer must be prepared to strike the victim, knee them in the solar plexus, or apply a chokehold to render them unconscious. It is an incredibly heavy psychological burden to realize that your job requires you to violently incapacitate a terrified, innocent civilian in order to drag their unconscious body into a rescue basket. The instructors in Petaluma make absolutely sure that every graduating swimmer possesses the cold, calculated capacity to execute that level of violence if the ocean demands it. But surviving the pool is only the academic portion of the curriculum. The true test comes when the swimmer is deployed to an operational Coast Guard air station and faces the horrific physics of the rotary wing jump. Let us deconstruct the mechanics of jumping out of an MH-60T Jayhawk helicopter into a catastrophic storm. You are sitting on the cold metal floor of the helicopter. The side door is wide open. The aircraft is hovering 40 feet above the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. Outside that door is a scene of absolute apocalyptic chaos. The wind is howling at 60 to 80 miles per hour. The rain is driving sideways, hitting your neoprene survival suit like a handful of gravel. The ocean swells below you are towering 15 to 20 feet high, massive, moving mountains of black water that rise and fall with terrifying speed. You are tethered to the aircraft by a harness. You shuffle to the edge of the open door, you look down. The most immediate threat is not the ocean, it is the helicopter itself. A military helicopter hovering at 40 feet generates an immense column of downward air known as rotor wash. This rotor wash hits the surface of the ocean and creates a localized artificial hurricane. It vaporizes the top layer of the water, creating a blinding, suffocating mist. If you try to breathe while directly under the helicopter, you will inhale water vapor and choke. Furthermore, the spinning rotor blades of the helicopter generate a massive amount of static electricity. If the hoist cable, the steel wire used to lower the rescue basket, touches the water or touches your body before it is properly grounded, it will discharge thousands of volts of electricity directly into your nervous system. It is enough voltage to stop a human heart, or at the very least, paralyze your muscles completely, causing you to instantly drown the moment you hit the water. The flight mechanic standing behind you in the cabin taps you on the shoulder. That is the signal. You do not rappel down, you do not climb down a ladder, you jump. You cross your arms over your chest, tightly gripping the collar of your dry suit so the impact does not shatter your jaw or rip the suit off your body. You step out of the aircraft. Gravity takes over. You fall 40 feet through the freezing, driving rain. The impact with the water is violent. The ocean is not a soft landing pad when you hit it from that height. The cold immediately shocks your system. The mammalian diving reflex triggers, you surface spitting saltwater, and you are immediately swallowed by the massive 20-foot swells. You are now entirely alone in the water. The helicopter above you is just a loud, blurred shape in the storm. The noise is deafening. You cannot hear the radio. You cannot hear the victim. You have to rely entirely on your visual tracking and your tactical swimming ability to navigate through the towering walls of water. You swim toward the target. You locate the victim. They are clinging to the overturned hull of a sinking fishing vessel. The hull is coated in diesel fuel and jagged, tearing metal. The waves are violently lifting the massive steel hull and slamming it back down into the ocean. If you get caught between the hull and a wave, you will be crushed to death instantly. You approach the victim, you execute the protocol, you establish communication, but the victim is panicked. They lunge at you. The exact training you endured in the chlorinated pool in Petaluma suddenly becomes your absolute reality. You are fighting a terrified man in a slick layer of toxic diesel fuel while 20-foot waves constantly break over your head. You physically overpower the victim. You secure them in the cross-chest carry. You signal the helicopter to lower the rescue basket. This is where the geometry of the ocean becomes highly lethal. The rescue basket is a heavy steel cage dangling from a thin metal cable attached to a helicopter hovering 40 feet above a violently pitching ocean. The basket is swinging like a massive, unpredictable wrecking ball. The pilot cannot hold the helicopter perfectly still in 80-mile-per-hour winds. The basket drops toward you, but as a massive wave lifts you 20 feet into the air, the basket suddenly becomes a lethal projectile hurtling toward your skull. You have to time the swell perfectly. You have to physically grab the heavy steel basket as it swings past, avoiding the static electric shock, and forcefully shove the thrashing, panicked victim inside. You lock the victim in, signal the flight mechanic, and watch as the cable goes taut, ripping the basket out of the water and hauling the victim up into the sky. You are left behind in the black water. You are alone again. You tread water in the massive swells, exhausted, your muscles burning, waiting for the basket to come back down for you. You are at the absolute mercy of the ocean. The Army controls the land. The Air Force controls the sky. But the Coast Guard rescue swimmer operates in the chaotic, violent intersection where the sky meets the sea, and they control absolutely nothing except their own mind. So why do we dedicate this amount of time and this level of deep psychological analysis to deconstruct the training and the reality of a Coast Guard aviation survival technician? Why am I giving you the classified breakdown of underwater releases and helicopter rotor wash? Because the brutal, unforgiving mechanics of the rescue swimmer apply directly to the emotional and organizational storms you are forced to navigate in your civilian life. You will likely never have to jump out of a Jayhawk helicopter into a freezing Atlantic hurricane to wrestle a drowning fisherman. But life is absolutely going to force you into the black water. You are going to face periods in your career, your business, your community, or your family where a massive, catastrophic storm hits, a market collapse, a sudden, devastating medical emergency in your family, a crisis that threatens to sink your entire organization. When that storm hits, you are going to be surrounded by drowning people. You will see your employees, your business partners, your friends, or your family members completely succumb to the panic. They will lose their spatial orientation. Their amygdala will hijack their logic. And because you are a leader, because you are the person watching this debrief, your instinct will be to jump into the water to save them. The lesson from the Coast Guard rescue swimmer is this: you cannot save a drowning person if you allow them to drag you to the bottom. When people are in the midst of a massive life crisis, they are not operating rationally. They are operating on primal fear. When you extend your hand to help them, when you offer them a job, when you lend them money, when you offer them emotional support, they will often violently latch onto you. They will become entirely dependent on your energy. They will climb your back to keep their own heads above water, and in doing so, they will push you completely under. If you allow a panicked business partner, a toxic family member, or a terrified employee to dictate the mechanics of the rescue, you will both drown. You must cultivate the absolute cold discipline of the rescue swimmer. When you enter the chaotic environment to help someone, you must establish immediate mechanical dominance over the situation. You cannot allow their panic to become your panic. You must execute your releases and escapes. If someone you are trying to help is actively dragging you down into financial ruin or emotional depression, you must have the psychological fortitude to forcefully break their grip. You have to set rigid, unforgiving boundaries. Sometimes the most loving, effective way to save a person is to push them away, establish a safe distance, let them exhaust their initial burst of panic, and then approach them from a position of absolute control. Furthermore, you must understand the terrifying reality of the rotor wash. When you enter a crisis, the very tools you use to solve the problem often create additional chaos. The helicopter brings the rescue basket, but it also brings the hurricane-force winds and the blinding water vapor. In your life, the lawyers, the sudden influx of cash, or the aggressive structural changes you bring in to solve a problem will often generate massive friction and confusion. You cannot let the rotor wash blind you. You have to expect the secondary chaos. Lower your head, hold your breath, and swim directly through the turbulence toward the objective. And finally, you must accept the profound, terrifying reality of the ocean. You cannot control the storm. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control the actions of your competitors. And you cannot control the random, devastating tragedies of human existence. The ocean does not care about your business plan, and it does not care about your feelings. The only thing you control is your own breath. The only thing you control is your own tactical capability in the water. You must detach your ego from the desire to control the uncontrollable environment and focus entirely on executing your specific, localized mission. Find the victim, break the grip, secure the basket, survive the swell. I have watched these men operate. I have seen the absolute cold-blooded courage required to look down at a boiling black ocean in the middle of the night, detach the safety tether, and step out into the void. I know the profound, terrifying isolation of the water, and I know the incredible, unbreakable will required to conquer it. This channel is my way of passing that operational fieldcraft directly onto you. We have a massive archive of tactical intelligence left to declassify. In the upcoming debriefings, we are going to break down the agonizing mathematics of Delta Force land navigation, and we are going to analyze the brutal, blood-soaked reality of the Army Ranger School combat patrols. If this briefing altered your perspective, if it gave you a psychological framework to break the grip of the panicked victims in your own life and survive the black water, then execute your end of our operational trade. Smash that subscribe button. Leave a like on the video. It costs you absolutely $0, but it is the exact logistical fuel that keeps this channel operational, independent, and completely clear of the censors. I want you to drop a comment down below. Tell me about a time in your life when you tried to save someone and they panicked and tried to drag you to the bottom. Tell me how you broke their grip, established control, and survived the storm. I read every single comment. I am always evaluating the mechanical discipline of the personnel in this squad to see who has the fortitude to jump from the aircraft. Keep your powder dry, control your breathing, break the grip. I will see you at the rally point. Out.